Hi again, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is Jonathan, your host and executive at MyPad, the most influential people of African descent.
Hey, everybody, it's Aziza, and I'll be co hosting with Jonathan today. I am the founder of On Your Narrative 54, global consultant, and class of 2023 MyPad honoree.
And you're listening to the Voices of Influential People podcast, or as we like to call it, the VIP, the show powered by MyPad that connects you to today's most influential people of African descent worldwide. Now, today's episode is titled How to Create a $1 Million Fashion Brand. And we are honored to have as our special guest the former NBA player, an entrepreneur, founder, and CEO of the clothing brand Actively Black, Lanny Smith. Welcome to the Voices of Influential People, Lanny Smith. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome, Lanny.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited about this.
Now, I wanted to start by saying, I know you've been busy traveling in and out of the state, and I wanted to congratulate you first and foremost on being honored by MyPad as a 2024 honoree. So congratulations on that. And whereabouts are you calling in from today? Which state?
Thank you so much. I'm currently in Los Angeles, California. And I have to say, it's definitely an honor, to be recognized in this way and to join this esteemed group. Who I am, my culture, my heritage means so much to me. And so to be honored by my own people really means something.
And you stand up for your people. And so I think it's important to recognize the stories that are told like yours. And we're a global podcast. So I like to say also, I'm joining in from London.
Yeah, and I'm joining in from the US.
And we also like to kick this show off with a little fun question so that our audience and us get to know you a bit more. So, Lanny, what's your favorite film and why?
Oh, my favorite film. I love movies, so I'm going to try to see how I can narrow this down to my favorite film. Black Panther, Ryan Coogler, Marvel Black Panther. Yeah, it has it's influenced me in multiple ways, including with what I'm doing today. And there were so many nuggets throughout that film that Ryan Coogler wrote in there that, I don't know if everybody caught all of them, just at surface level when they first watched the movie, that I really appreciated. And also I got to see a superhero on the screen that looked like me, whose skin was like mine, whose hair was like mine. And yeah, the parallels between, Vibranium and, our tagline, there's greatness in our DNA. There's just a lot of, there's so much that I took from that film that I carry with me every day. So I'm going to say Black Panther.
And I like Black Panther as well. But one thing that's important is that the inspiration that you drew from that film is what inspired you to do what you're doing with Actively Black. And that's what we're going to touch on right now, actually. So your story is incredible. And you started off obviously pursuing an MBA career, but ended up transitioning to a successful entrepreneurship career with a multi-million-dollar brand. But this journey was by no means easy. So talk us through your story. Like, how did it begin and what initially set you on the journey of going through entrepreneurship?
Yeah, as you mentioned, my dream was to play in the NBA since I was 4 or 5 years old. That was the ultimate dream for me. And, my mother has kept, she's shown me homework that, I would bring home from elementary school, and they would ask you, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I literally wrote that I wanted to be an NBA player. Like, it was something that, I didn't have a plan B or C. That was everything to me. So everything that I did from childhood into adolescence was working towards that dream to play in the NBA. I was blessed and fortunate that, I got my opportunity. I signed with the Sacramento Kings in 2009. But unfortunately, 33 days after signing my first contract, a teammate fell into my knee, tore some cartilage in my knee, and I had 2 microfracture surgeries, and my NBA career was over with just like that. So my transition was one that was unexpected. I never envisioned, this for my life at all. I thought I was going to play, 10 plus years in NBA and then, figure something out after that. But the career ending the way it did, it forced me into a situation where I had to, for the first time, think, one, who am I without the game of basketball? So I went through the depression. I went through the identity crisis of trying to figure out who I was outside of being this athlete that I had been my entire life, and trying to figure out what am I going to do with the rest of my life? You know what I mean? And so that was a very tough period for me, emotionally, psychologically, all of physically, all those things. And my faith is something that uh, carried me through those moments. You know what I mean? I'll never forget praying this prayer after that second surgery. When I knew my career was over with, and I said, God, if this is going to be taken away from me, then I'm begging you to show me what you want me to do with my life. That's literally how I said the prayer. Like I was in a state of almost desperation. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. Like, I don't, like, God, show me what you want me to do. And it was probably 2 weeks after saying that prayer, I had the idea to create a faith-based sports apparel brand. So the first company that I actually launched was called Active Faith. And the premise behind it was to build, I guess, the faith-based version of Nike, and to utilize the apparel and the brand to spread, the message of the gospel, and also encourage people to be active, not only in their fitness, but also active in your faith, because I believe faith is a verb. It's something that we have to actually choose to act out. You know what I'm saying? And it was just so powerful the way, I launched this out of my mom's house, you know what I mean? And it took, maybe a year or so, and then it just started kind of taking off. You know what I mean? My partners in that brand, Anthony Tolliver, Stephen Curry, who most people, know from basketball, and they were still busy playing in the NBA. I was at home building the brand, and we saw how powerful it was because it was more than just the product. It was more than just the apparel. We were seeing this positive impact that it was having on people's lives. I thank God every day for blessing me with another dream. You know what I mean? Because that's not something that I envision myself doing. And that dream, that second dream, not only saved my life, I really give it credit with saving my life. But then it also allowed me to impact so many other lives in a way that I likely never would have been able to do, even if I played 10 years in the NBA. But there was an interesting dynamic that was going on as I was building Active Faith. I was actually purposely hiding myself from people knowing that I was the founder of Active Faith. I thought that if people knew that it was this young Black male that was behind the brand, that it would negatively affect the business. And unfortunately, I had multiple incidents that validated that fear. You know what I mean? Like, I remember doing customer service, and I was on the phone with a customer, and he said, "You sound like you're Black." And I said, "Well, I am." And he immediately asked for a refund. I remember there was a group that was interested in possibly investing in Active Faith, and we went back and forth over email. They set up the in-person meeting. I never forget walking into that room, and that the look on their face, they were shocked that it was me. You know what I mean? And so, unfortunately, the racism and the things like that are still part of society. But it was an internal conflict for me because my parents raised me to be proud of my Blackness, be proud of my culture, be proud of who I am. And here I had built a multi-million-dollar generating brand from my mother's house, yet I was afraid to show that was my company. I was hiding myself, and I felt very conflicted internally. And so the seed for Actively Black was actually planted a long time ago, even during that process, because I started to think, well, if I can build this brand for the faith-based community, can I build that for my community, for the Black community? You know what I mean? Put the idea on the shelf. And then 2018, Black Panther came out. And like I said, just seeing a superhero on the screen that with skin like mine, with hair like mine, was so powerful, and it kind of just shows the power of representation. You know what I'm saying? Where you can see yourself in these in a way that is positive. You know, there's often very negative imagery and stereotypes of Black people, and especially Black men, that we see portrayed in media. So to be able to see that just really impacted me. And then I saw the diaspora come together around this film in a way that I hadn't witnessed before in my lifetime. You know what I mean? Like, there's obviously been dialogue about some of the separation, some of the division between Black people ourselves, Black people in America and African. Like, there's kind of always been this thing. And I saw the diaspora come together in a way that was just so beautiful to me. And so once again, that seed that was already planted, I was like, okay, that brand, that idea, I want to create a brand that makes my people feel the way I felt walking out of that theater. And put the idea on the shelf again. I moved to Los Angeles 6 months before the pandemic hit. The city went on a lockdown. And I remember I was saying to myself during quarantine, like, I'm not going to let this time pass without birthing something new. And I didn't know what that something new was going to be yet. And then we experienced 2020 from all of our own perspectives, you know what I mean? And after the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, I saw all these brands come out with these performative declarations about what they were going to do for the Black community. And it felt like it was just part of their new marketing strategy. You know what I mean? If you take away the pandemic from 2020, the events of 2020 were not new to Black people or the Black community. These things have been happening for decades, for centuries. And none of these brands, none of these corporations ever said anything about it. But now all of a sudden, you know, they were coming out with all these statements. And I felt like it was performative. And I think that was the thing that pushed me over the edge. And I was like, you know what? We're not going to keep asking for a seat at that table. We're going to build our own table. You know, we're not going to depend on them to make good on their promises, which we're in 2024 now. 4 years later, we see that most of them were empty promises. But at the time, I recognized that they were empty promises. And I was like, we're just going to build our own and, you know, be able to serve our people the way that we see best. And so I announced it, I think on Juneteenth, and I put my head down and was just grinding. And on Black Friday, November 27th, 2020, I launched Actively Black out of my apartment, you know, to be this premium athleisure wear brand with the sole purpose to uplift and reinvest back into the Black community. So yeah, that's how I got started.
It's an amazing story. I think one key trend that I noticed in your story is your ability to either not compromise yourself, i.e. with your faith, or to overcome compromising yourself. So, you know, starting to show that you're the owner of this active faith gear. But one important thing that I need people to see is, you know, you don't have to compromise your faith. You don't have to compromise being Black in order to be successful. But you also have key skills, maybe transferable skills from the NBA that you took into your current career now. So what advice would you give to other people in terms of skills that they need to show or to build in order to build a successful clothing brand?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, one of the transferable traits of being an athlete, especially an elite level athlete, that I have transferred over to what, you know, I'm doing now is one, the work ethic, right? You know, when you understand that there are only 450 jobs in the NBA, there's millions of kids that want to play in the NBA, you know, and I'm sure, you know, same thing with Premier League, and, you know, like there's a finite number of jobs. And so if you're competing against millions of people for that, and there's a certain level of work ethic, there's a certain level of sacrifice that you have to be willing to commit to even give yourself a chance to do it. Cause there's still lottery ticket chances. You know what I mean? And on top of that, knowing that the odds are against you, there has to be a certain level of unshakable belief in what you are doing and what you're building and what you're working towards. Because you are literally striving for something that has a very small chance of success. That's just the reality of it. Whether you're trying to make it to the NBA, the Premier League, or even start a successful business, the percentages are against you. I think, with startups, I think it's something crazy, like 90% of startups fail within the first 24 months. And then, and then the number that reaches 5 years is very low. And then beyond that. And so, the belief, the work ethic, but then also there's a level of humility that you have to have. And I also think I think humility can be a skill as well. When the NBA ended for me, I couldn't go into whatever the next thing was thinking that who I was as an athlete was gonna, I couldn't bring my ego in the door with anything else. I had to realize I'm gonna start from the bottom in anything else that I'm gonna do. I can bring my work ethic, I can bring my belief, but how many points I scored on the court don't matter anymore. You know what I'm saying? And so I realized that I was starting from scratch. I will say this: I don't have any business background. I don't have any design background. I don't have any apparel background. I don't have any background in anything that I'm doing right now. And I say that as encouragement that your next thing may not be something that your current skill set or who you currently are will transfer to, and that's okay. And that's okay. I joke and I tell people all the time, I graduated from the University of Houston, but I went to YouTube University, when I started, my business career, because I didn't have any money. So when they were saying it was going to cost thousands of dollars for a website, I was like, well, I can't afford that. So I had to learn how to build my own website. I spent hours and hours on YouTube learning how to code my own website, hours watching videos, learning how to use Photoshop and Illustrator because I don't have design background. You know what I mean? So in order for me to take the ideas in my head and put them on a computer of how I want the apparel to look like, I had to learn how to use Photoshop and Illustrator. And so I was able to acquire new skills.
In the face of adversity, where did all of that unshakable mindset come from? Like that resilience to pursue one goal?
Part of it, I think, is like the inspiration from my mother. When I say, there's greatness in our DNA, like for me, I don't have to look far back to see that greatness. My mother is a country girl from a small town in Louisiana, Gina, Louisiana, and both of her parents had to stop their education in the fifth grade to go help work in the fields. They were sharecroppers, and so she grew up, in poverty. She was the first person in our family to go to college, to graduate from college, and she became a computer programmer. And so then she moved to Texas when she had me. So I grew up seeing a Black woman in the early 80s in the South in the United States in Texas, where, you're talking the place where slavery existed. You know what I'm saying? So some of those backwards mindsets still exist. And she was able to become one of the top computer programmers in the state of Texas. And so like I saw like a superhero kind of in my household that inspired me in a way where like I don't have limits to my dreams. Some people, they have ideas or dreams, but then they let doubt creep in, or they see the obstacles and they're like, maybe I can't do that. I never had those limitations to my dreams, whether it was to play in the NBA or to start these businesses. And I think that's just kind of a direct reflection from the inspiration from my mother. If God places a dream or a vision on my heart, I don't really see a limit to it.
And Lanny, so you kind of touched on the question I was about to lead into, about how you have actually not left your identity. It has not, it's very much infused into your brand, into everything that you do, regarding Actively Black. But we know that you celebrate our collective strength, our heritage, creative expression as Black people throughout the diaspora, through your brand and through your line. But I would love to know, in addition to your mother's journey and that powerful story that you just shared, what was it like growing up for you as a Black person in America? And, how has your personal journey further inspired the work that you do today, as well as being a Black man in America? It's a multi-layered, a lot to that experience. So we would love to know if you could kind of let us into that world.
It is. It is. You know, my mother being from the South, my father being from Detroit, learning of their experiences growing up, and even my own. I was just having a conversation the other day, yesterday actually, with a friend whose son um, just experienced some unfortunate racism at his school, and there was no protection from him, and my friend felt heartbroken that his son had to deal with something that generations of us before have had to deal with. Like in 2024, still dealing with this. And so I was triggered by the story because I remember, you know, being in school and having some racial slurs directed at me, and defending myself in a situation where some white kids were trying to jump me, and I fought back, and the school suspended me, and they did not punish those other kids. And um, I remember, at a young age, you don't fully understand the societal things that are going on. You know what I'm saying? So I remember being so confused, like, why am I being punished for defending myself, and why are they not being? Why is nothing happening to them? And so um, there were multiple experiences like that growing up, and then even, the Black experience with law enforcement in this country is one that has been traumatic. You know what I mean? So, I've been in those situations where the police have pulled me over. They've searched my car looking for drugs or guns or whatever the case may be, putting me in the back of a police car with no probable cause. You know what I mean? Like we've had those types of experiences, and they're unfortunate. But you know, it's the older I got and the more I studied, the more I researched, the more I understood what's really going on, the systems that are really in play, and how long these systems have existed. It started to make a lot of things make sense to me. You know what I mean? As to why things are the way they are. My father and both of his brothers served in the military. My father served in the Navy. His older brother served in the Marines, and his younger brother served in the Army. And even to sit and hear their stories of, we went to fight for this country and we experienced racism while we were in the military. And then when we got back, we were still treated as second class citizens. You know what I'm saying? It's a sobering reality of how this country views us, how society has viewed us. And the more I study globally, you realize, man, Black people across the world are treated in a certain way. You know what I mean? And all of those things kind of shape your experiences. They shape how you view the world. They shape these things. And I think for me, it also has played a part into why I am so passionate about what I'm building and why I'm building it. You know what I mean? Because I truly believe that there are side effects from the centuries of oppression. There are side effects from the centuries of discrimination. And some of that, unfortunately, is the people who have experienced that begin to subconsciously absorb some of that thinking, right? So subconsciously, some of us have started to think that we are less than, that we don't deserve certain things, or that we're not as smart as, or that, all of those different things. And so one of my purposes with Actively Black is to deprogram and reprogram our own people. One, to redefine what it means to be Black, right? Because there's been so much negative connotation assigned to the word Black, so much so that I had Black people telling me not to name my company Actively Black. Like there were Black executives that I talked to and said, don't name it Actively Black. It's going to prevent it from being successful. And I was like, that's exactly why I need to name this Actively Black, because we need to reclaim and redefine what that actually means. And the tagline, there's greatness in our DNA. I wanted to build something that was not based on our trauma. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to focus on our trauma. I want to focus on our greatness that has been intentionally overlooked, intentionally minimized, because the powers that be, the systems that be, don't actually want us to know who we really are or to know what our greatness really is. So, I'm not really building an apparel brand. I tell people now, the clothes are just a uniform for the movement. And the clothes is what's bringing everybody in. It's what's building the tribe. But the real purpose of this is to uplift us. And part of that is to change the way we think and view ourselves.
And so if we were thinking and viewing ourselves as being actively Black, what would you say that looks like?
The Bible says, as a man thinketh, so is he, right? So if we are really owning there's greatness in my DNA, if I really own that thought and there's greatness in my DNA, it starts to change the way you do everything. So, whether I'm a student in school, and I'm facing adversity or distraction or whatever obstacles, when I think about, man, there's greatness in my DNA. I can overcome this. You know what I mean? It helps in every single area of your life, thinking that that's where things are coming from. And so I think part of it is being actively Black means owning that greatness in your DNA. I think it also means seeing each other in a way where we're one tribe, right? So I don't call the supporters of Actively Black customers. I call them the tribe. And so with Actively Black, you see the logo, it's not just the stylized A, there's meaning behind it. So that a lot of it is inspired by, the Pan-African flag and Marcus Garvey's movement, and what he was trying to do is, the red representing like the blood that we all share. You're in, is it Memphis? You're in the UK, I'm in LA, there's some Black people in Jamaica, there's, wherever in Africa, there's something in our DNA that ties us all together, right? That's that blood, right? That ties us all together. The green represents, our natural resources, our natural wealth, our natural talents and abilities. We take what ties us all together. We take all of this that we naturally have. And when we put that together, when we finally put that together, that's where the elevation happens. You know what I mean? So that's really the meaning behind the logo and what this represents. And so if Actively Black can be the one tribe or the one flag or the one digital nation that we can all get behind and get under, there's power in that. And so, that's part of what it means to be Actively Black, loving your brother, loving your sister, pulling each other up as we're climbing, and knowing that once we realize who we are, like there's no stopping us.
I want to be a part of the tribe.
Exactly. Us being of one community, of one voice, and together is not just something that you're saying over this call. This is something that you actively do. And one thing that I like that you do in line with that is to invest back into the community, into other Black-led projects and initiatives and programs. And so I'm curious, what specifically do you look for when it comes to investing back into the community, into programs?
Yeah, first and foremost, Black owned. You know what I mean? Like the charities and organizations that we give back to have to be Black owned and Black led. But two, real action, right? So actively, it's a double entendre. It's an activewear brand. Yeah, it's moisture wicking and all that for you to work out in, but it's a double entendre, just like active faith. You know what I'm saying? There's got to be action behind this. You know what I'm saying? So the organizations that truly have their hands and feet in the Black community, that's what we give back to. We donate to Black Kids Code, helping to get these kids, these Black kids, exposure to coding and tech, where Black people are underrepresented, but we know that's where the whole world is headed towards, right? Black Mamas Matter, which is an organization that is fighting against the maternal mortality rate of Black women, which is 3 times higher than white women in the United States, and I'm sure similar in other places in the world. We do mental health events, Black mental health events, and there's a reason why I specify Black mental health, because even though mental health has been talked about more recently and more people are understanding what it means and helping with it, there are experiences that are unique to the Black experience, both in America, in the UK, wherever you are. There are some experiences and some traumas that are unique to the Black experience that I believe have to be healed. I got a chance to visit Ghana in 2022. I believe I went, 2022. And I went, to visit, some of the slave castles, and I was apprehensive and nervous about the effect that it was going to have on me in the beginning. I thought that I was going to just be like filled with rage and anger. And there were some moments of that. There were also some moments of like extreme sadness that I felt in the moment, but overwhelmingly what I walked away with, I remember walking through called the point of no return, the door of no return, where so many of my ancestors walked through those doors onto those slave ships and never returned. But the power in it was like, I'm looking at this door that says the point of no return. But I had returned. Right. And so there was like this sense of like being unstoppable that I remember, heading back home. I was like, yo, my ancestors came across the Atlantic on slave ships. I'm flying back over in first class, you know what I'm saying? And I felt like all of these things that were done that could have destroyed our people, it didn't destroy us, and we still here, you know what I'm saying? And then I thought back to like, okay, for me to exist, for me to have had the opportunity to return, to go visit those slave castles, to walk through that point of no return, that means somebody in my lineage, if I keep going back, somebody had to survive every single era. Somebody had to survive Jim Crow. Somebody had to survive slavery. Somebody had to survive the Middle Passage. Somebody had to survive those slave dungeons. Somebody in my bloodline survived long enough for the next generation, and so that's there's just a certain amount of power that I felt. So I would encourage anybody, especially Black Americans, anybody who sees this episode, even if it's just once, go back to Africa, go to Africa, go, even if you're just going to visit, even if it's just one visit, have your feet touch that soil. There's something about it that will change you that you might not even be able to understand or articulate, but it's needed. It's needed. And I wanted to share that because I believe for our ultimate elevation as a people, we all have to connect back to the source in some form or fashion. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I just want to share that. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share.
Yeah, and I just wanted to do a quick follow-up on that because as a Black person that grew up, in America and the South, and my grandparents' family, Mississippi, so that's the deep segregated South, and a lot of, things and adversity and that they've gone through and they went through to continue, right? So I could be here and the rest of us could be here. But when we take those journeys back to Africa, it like you said stirs up within us, can stir up within us like a certain part of us, a rage or upset or anger. But how did you actually kind of shift that to reconciliation and reclamation as a Black American, taking that back, with you? What, like, after you left and you were on that plane and you realized, like, all right, I'm actually,
I think it happened even before I left. You know what I mean? Like the love that the people showed me was beautiful. You know what I mean? And then you get there and you realize like yo, like I saw a few people that I'm like, yo, that looked like my cousin back home, and that looked like somebody I grew up with, and then it becomes tangible. It becomes tangible that this is really home. This is really where you're connected to. So I think there's just a certain amount of healing that's just in that experience itself. But I think it was the man, it's almost kind of come full circle on this. Part of the disconnect is something that that Ryan Coogler wrote into Black Panther. The Killmonger character was one that I identified with, right? I identified with that anger. You know what I'm saying? I identified with that. You know, he was like, I mean, y'all got vibranium and we could have used this to, you know, to fight back against our oppressors and the stuff that we had to deal with here. And, you know, so I identify with that anger. I identify with that. And at the end, even though he dies, you see this peace come over him when he's back home that you don't see in that character at any other point in the film. You don't ever see him in a state of peace. You know what I'm saying? And so it's I don't know. It's something about that experience that just like it's like, man, I'm still here. Like everything that they tried to do to destroy us, like I'm actually still here, and I can actively impact what my future looks like. Like I can't change what happened in the past. You know what I'm saying? But the fact that I'm here right now means that I can actively do something that's going to affect my future children, the people who interact with me that I come in contact with. Like, and so I think the shift happens when you realize oppression makes you feel powerless. Discrimination makes you feel powerless. All those things it makes you feel powerless in some way. I think it almost just kind of like, no, I'm actually very powerful. You know, Ryan Coogler, the director of Black Panther and Wakanda Forever, was in LA speaking at a like fireside chat that Amplify Africa, the organization Amplify Africa, they were the ones who actually sponsored this event. And I was asking him about some of those nuggets that he wrote into Black Panther and some of the deeper meanings of some of the things that he wrote into the film. And one of those was about the Killmonger character and this discussion and debate that is still ongoing between Black Americans and African people about, you know, some of the disconnect, some of the division, some of the stuff that's there. And so, you know, I spoke from a place of like, man, I'm so glad that you wrote the Killmonger character the way you did, because I identified with that anger. You know what I mean? Almost to the point where me and some other people that saw that film, we were like, yo, Killmonger isn't a bad guy. He's not a villain. You know what I mean? Like when you peel back the layers, he was lost. You know what I mean? He was lost. And there was a disconnect from who his real people were. You know what I mean? And that is very symbolic of the Black experience in America. And so Ryan, man, he's such, first of all, Ryan is he's a genius. He's absolutely amazing. I'm just so impressed by him. But he said, he's like, yo, have you ever been to Africa? And I was like, nah, I haven't been. He was like, you need to go. And he was like, when you go, when you come back, some of that anger is not going to come back with you. And I was like, it was just, you know, it was just shocking the way that he put it. But I literally booked my trip to go to Africa after that conversation with Ryan Coogler. So I go to Africa. I'm staying at the Kapinski Hotel in Accra, Ghana. And I'm in the lobby and I'm wearing one of the actively Black Panther collaboration. I'm wearing one of the hoodies. And Letitia Wright walks into the lobby.
What?
Oh my days. Wow.
I got a picture. I'll send it to you guys.
Oh,
But,
wow.
you know, in Wakanda Forever, you know, she becomes the new Black Panther. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yo, Ryan Coogler, I wouldn't have booked that trip if Ryan Coogler didn't tell me what he told me that night. booked a trip to Africa. I'm at Kapinski Hotel, sitting in the lobby, and Letitia Wright walks into the thing, and I'm wearing the hoodie, and so got a chance to actually meet her. And it was like, man, I just remember thinking like, how can you even make this up? You know what I'm saying? It's almost like nobody can convince me that God isn't real, just in the way that certain things are orchestrated, that there's no way I couldn't even have planned that. You know what I'm saying? There's no way I could have even planned that. Yeah, I wanted to share that story. And so I know Ryan's not on social media, but Ryan Coogler, if you ever see any of these clips, man, I just want to tell you, brother, you have inspired me beyond belief. And thank you for telling me to go to Africa. It has been life-changing for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And one of the things Jonathan and I were talking about before the interview started was I recently talked to some people about, the power of owning your story and your narrative. And one of those points that also someone reminded me, even though my background is storytelling, journalism, community, all that, they said, what is the shortest distance between two people? And the answer is their story. And so because Ryan exchanged that story with you, that distance just grew so much shorter and put you on this additional path and journey that is amazing. Like we could not have imagined that you were going to share this with us.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, the
Yeah.
power of story.
Yeah.
Definitely. So I just want to ask you in future, since we're talking about Black Panther and they also went into the future, as a 2024 My Pat honoree, like what are your expectations, hopes, and how do you feel, now that you're a 2024 My Pat honoree?
Yeah, being named a 2024 My Pat honoree is it really means something to me. Like I said, to be recognized by my people. You know what I mean? Like I've gotten some stuff from awards from Fast Company, from Forbes, from these other publications, and they're great. You know what I mean? And I appreciate them, but to be seen and recognized and appreciated by your own always means more. You know what I mean? So I hope that this, for me personally, allows more of my story to be told for other people to see what's happening. But for the brand, I hope it also like opens up for more opportunity to connect with other people throughout the diaspora that can help fulfill the vision for what this is supposed to be, because this isn't a brand I'm building for Black America. This is a brand that I'm trying to build for the diaspora. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm excited about. Yeah, I'm just got to throw this out here. By the way, we're outfitting Team Nigeria again for the Olympics, this summer in Paris. And so,
Nice. Yeah.
The connection to the diaspora is what I'm hoping, through this continues to happen, just to strengthen that connection, and we just keep building. I'm honored. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this prestigious group, and I'm it's just the beginning.
We are so appreciative of everything that you have shared so far with us. And I don't know if you can believe it, but I can't believe it, Jonathan, that we're already at the end of this interview,
Oh,
this discussion. So we might need to do a part 2, y'all. Okay.
if y'all need me longer, I got a little more time, or we can reschedule another one. Either way, because I obviously enjoy sharing with you. So let me know.
Yes, we enjoyed you too. And we always like to ask the guests, just in case we haven't asked certain questions, is there anything else that you would like to share that we haven't asked you?
Because I know we talked a lot about backstory. I know we talked about the why and all those different types of things, but I know part of the reason for this particular episode is about, these entrepreneurs trying to build brands and build a clothing brand. So one thing I do want to touch on, or the advice I would give, is a lot of people will have an idea for a product or a brand, and they'll focus so much on that. And then it's like, okay, now let me go find an audience to sell that to. What will give you the best possibility for success is to reverse engineer that. Find your audience or build your audience and then build product that serves that audience. That's been one of the keys to our success. And also we're just living in an era and a time now, whether it's millennial, Gen Z, et cetera, where people care more about what a brand stands for, what it represents, all those things. So actually creating niche brands and products is a strength, because that's also how you stand out in such a crowded marketplace. There's 1,000 athleisure wear brands. You know what I mean? There's 1,000. There's so many clothing brands. How do you really stand out? Find your audience, build your audience, and super serve your niche audience. That will give you, the best chance of success.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That is like such great insight and perspective. And it's just humbling and wonderful to have someone that has reached the level that you have reached of success to be open to share that with other people. So thank you so much for that.
One last thing, if you
Go
have
ahead.
time, I just have to say
Feel
this one
free.
last thing,
Yes,
because
yes, yes.
because people will see the success and they'll want that, right? But I always want to keep it all the way real and authentic. This is a hard journey. This is a hard journey. You're going to have way more no's than yeses. You're going to be rejected more than you're accepted. There are going to be storm after storm after storm. That's also why I encourage people to get into things that you're actually passionate about, because the chasing after the money or the material things will not sustain you for what you're going to actually have to go through in order to make it and to be successful. And so the last bit of advice that I would give to anybody, any entrepreneur, anybody, is understand that in the beginning, other people may not see what you see, and that's okay. We all get discouraged sometimes. We're like, man, they don't see what I'm trying to build. That's okay. In fact, if everybody could see what you see, then it likely isn't an idea that's going to stand out, because everybody can see it, right? It was given to you for a reason. And when you see skyscrapers in the sky, you got to understand, when they were built, the first thing that was done was they weren't built up. They had to dig down. They had to dig down deep to build this foundation. And think about the amount of times you've driven by a site, a construction site, and you paid no attention to it. Like, oh, construction's going on. They were digging. They were building a foundation. And then you look up one day and there's a skyscraper, and then you see it. Then, not everybody sees it. Not everybody can see the skyscraper. They're not going to see it when it's time to be digging. They'll see it after you build. So don't let those things discourage you. Thank you guys for having me. I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Please have me back.
we would love to. And before we let you go too, we always like to keep our audience in mind. So we ask them to submit questions, for our VIPs. And since you are now a VIP, we would like to ask you a question for the audience. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So the question from the audience is: many leaders and entrepreneurs like yourself have a personal motto or mantra that keeps them motivated. Could you share yours, and also what inspired you to select this personal motto or mantra?
A personal mantra for me. You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if I have one specific personal mantra. There's been, especially as I've grown and your life journey is going to take you to different places. There's different times where different things have meant something different to me. I remember when I was starting Active Faith, the verse Colossians 3:17, and whatsoever you do in word or deed, do in the name of the Lord. That was something that I still carry with me to this day. But it was something that I was applying to what I was building, because it's like, whatever I do, whatever it is, if I'm doing it for His glory, then I'm doing it for the right reasons. But outside of that, right now, there's a greatness in my DNA. That's the thing that I take with me, because no matter what, even for me, I struggle with, what is it called? Where sometimes imposter syndrome. There's times where I suffer from imposter syndrome, and I have to remind myself, man, there's greatness in my DNA. I'm here for a reason. I'm in this room for a reason. I had this opportunity for a reason, and those things carried me forward. So, yeah.
Fantastic. And I think that is wonderful advice too for our audience out there. And also the journey to getting to that place and how you mentioned that it kind of shifts, for you as you go throughout this particular path and journey that you're on. So it's okay for your motto to or mantra to be one thing initially and then it transitions into something else, but it's all a part of that foundation that you spoke about and knowing that the greatness
Yeah.
is just in your DNA. So wonderful.
Yeah.
And audience, you heard that wonderful insight and perspective. So don't forget to submit your questions for the next episode because you just never know who we might select, which question we might select, and who the next VIP might be. So thank you.
Exactly. And Lanny, we want to thank you for blessing us with your conversation, blessing us with your honesty, and blessing us with your presence. And I want to congratulate you now as you're an official inductee into the MyPad VIP suite. And so to our listeners,
Thank you.
This has been Jonathan and Aziza. Make sure to tune into our next episode of the Voices of Influential People podcast to hear from our next VIP.